In this video, we'll dive into the movie Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. We'll discuss the storyline, summarize the plot, and explore the cast and characters. Additionally, we will cover the movie's production details and box office performance. Finally, we will share wide reviews and share person reaction. So, let's get started. Time Burton's latest fantastical audio Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children earned a hefty $28.5 million at the US box office in its first weekend on release. But Peter Park's acclaimed disaster movie Deepwater Horizon, about the 2010 oil rig explosion in the Gulf of Mexico, failed to attract an audiences. In a crowded autumn's weekend, Miss Peregrine's come out on top. The 20th Century Fox release, adapted from the Renaissance Riggs' popular young adult fantasy novel, cost $120 million, meaning it will need a strong performance. Overseas too, it started out with $36.5 million in 49 markets, Burton's best opening since Dark Shadows in 2012. It validates the whole notion of why we made this film, which is something that's why original and creative. Sir Chris Aronson's president of domestic attributions at Fox, at least I feel that is what audiences are looking for. There is some figure with the same old, same old. If there is anything this movie is not this that. The Water Horizons cost at least $110 million to produce, featuring a nearly free-size replica for the Water Horizon oil rig. The landscape release is well reviewed but managed only $20 million. The film's performance was another blow for the struggling landscape, which has had difficulty finding hits since the Hunger Games saga finished. Its stock price has fallen at the departure of its movie chief, Rob Friedman, was announced last month. It does, however, have a film domains and land later this year and is expected to be an Oscar favorite. Last week, top film The Magnificent Seven sat to the third with $15 million in its second week. Disney's uplifting jazz product Tale Queen of Catry starring David. Audiences have had a surprising number of adult-driven options at the multiplex of late, including another tutorial. Clint Eastwood Salem and Denzel Washington's remake of The Magnificent Sevens aim for similar audiences. Coming of Catway, directed by Myra Nair, tried to family to the inspiring the story of a chess player from the Islam's Paul Senior Media, analyst for Game Score, and AC issue of budget among the trio of the original, particularly in the case of the price. Originally slated for releases in December 2015, the Zack Netflix and Christian's will his comedy mastermind set on the shelf for a Airways distributor Relatively Media. When through Chapter 11 bankruptcy production, it opened with a mediocre $6.6 million. Two other notable films opened in limited releases, with plans for later expansions. Andrea Arnold Road Trip, Odyssey, American's Honey, with Shia LaBeouf and the newcomer Sasha Lane, debuted with $75 million on off-screen linear. Staring Ravices opened with the $102 million on 5 seconds. Saying this message is annoying, we know that. Imagine that is what is it like writing them. But it's also extremely important, one of the Guardian's greatest assets, and it's a reader-funded medal. Reader funding means we can cover that we like. We are not beholden to the political whims of the billionaire owner. No one can tell us what now to say. We are not desperately seeking your attention for its own sake. We pursue resources that our team deems important and believe are worthy of your time, allowing as many people as possible to read quality journalism for around the world, especially people who live in the places where the free press and independent. The support of readers like you in Pakistan keeps all that possible. At the moment, just 2.4% of our regular readers help fund our work. If you want to protect independent journalism, please consider joining them today. We value whatever you can spare, but supporting one on a monthly basis makes the most impact, enabling greater investment in our future fearless journalism. As our thanks to you, we can offer you some great benefits, including making these messages available. We have made it very quick to set up, so we hope you will consider it. Thank you. Seeing this message is annoying, we know that. Imagine what is the right in term, but it's extremely important. One of the Guardian's greatest assets is his radio-funded mentor. We are not beholden to big vertical firms of a billionaire owner. No one can tell us. I am assuming a lot of you were left scratching your heads after watching the Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children movie. Must be trying to figure out how leaps really worked in the movie. Direction is to be blamed a little for that, I surmise. Since you lose the significance of showing low interest and exists was next to be absent. Also, the surprises question that the films should have tracked all along never really came to be fruition. It goes without saying that the charm story is huge. To be stuck in a loop, to be able to rely on hour and hour again is a concept and demand an ample amount of focus and time to process. I believe a 2 hours and minutes movie can't relate to do a previous concept like that justice. Now, since we can't really wait for a TV show to watch things fall into place, let us make do in a whatever little we have to work with. I have explained how timeless in the Miss Pregrine's Home for Peculiar Children movie works here. So without wasting more time, it's let to go it. Before doing his grandfather's app tells Jake to go to the cat Sharon home, and then to find our bird in the loop of September 3. 1943 double yes you grasped right was none other than Miss Peregrine. Abe tells him to tell her about what happened. Jacob follows the children in his grand's story into some care. That's when he enters the same time loop his grandpa had talked about it before dying. The day of September 3, 1943. The same red day when Miss Peregrine's home was destroyed by a German bomber too. But since Peregrine was a young she could control time. They lived there every day without growing old. So that in sense, if you can come out of the loop, you begin to grow normally, I surmise. In an unfortunate turn of the events, an ornithologist Robert Everett follows Jake to the cave where the loop entrance stood. He is able to enter it since he is a peculiar. It is also revealed that he was none other than Mr. Baron, the main antagonist himself. He works in Miss Peregrine's home for peculiar children in her time loop of September 3, 1943, demanding her to come to his loop, which is a matter affect Miss Advocate and created in the Blackpool. It is also the term loop where is immortality experiment were being performed in the year 2016. The loop is 6 months old from the present day with the date January 11, 2016. Miss Peregrine is abducted in her young form and taken away by Baron. Children encounter a halo and dragged along with the Baron. Owing to the absence of the young Miss Peregrine, the German bomb falls closing the 1943 time loop forever. It cannot be reset. The clueless children then decide to help Miss Peregrine by going to the Blackpool. The same location had a loop entry point of January 11, 2016. The time loop where Baron and take Miss Peregrine, they make a theatrical entry into the air by taking a Titanic ship to the Blackpool port. Remember, while making their journey to Blackpool, Emma breaks to it Jake, Destiny's advocate is dead. But Blackpool can't be reset. That would mean the loop would close and then time would become real time, meaning Emma and the children would have to go to their time. If not, then they might be with as time catches up. Even Jack could continue to thrive as a normal person in 2016. The final showdown, the big event where skeleton of Enoch O'Connor fight the Halo, then takes place on January 11, 2016. In the same Miss Advocate's loop at the seaside carnival, children had to get out of the other loop before 4:30, which was the time of the Advocate's loop closing. If not, they would get stuck in 2016, only to die quickly. When everything comes down and Baron is vanquished, Jack says goodbye to everyone and he returns home to find his grandfather will alive. This is primarily because that event of Halo killing Abe had not occurred yet. It is also very unlikely to happen since Halo and Baron have been killed before time, meaning Baron would never go to Florida with the Hollow to meet up. Miss Peregrine, on the other hand, is hurt, so he can't come back to her normal form to create time loops. In the end, Abe in Sooners even thought Miss Peregrine's 1943 loop has closed. Jake at least know where they were, app offers him some international currency and a map showing the exact location of all the loop to track them down. In order to research the same time, however, he has to travel many time loops that explain his hair growth, taking shortcut that would take him to the end precise moment where they were about to leave with the ship in the year 1943 still. If you were vexed at how he traveled back to her, here is an explanation of Jack's journey from the movie. The closest loop Jake entered was in California at the start. He went into the loop and in the year 96, it was not told. He looked for the next loop, which could have been on different date in the same year, and was located on in Tokyo. So he traveled to Tokyo. Into the loop Jake could have taken him further close to 1943, which was the year 1942, is there where he joined Navy to wait for the day of the loop, from where he was supposed to enter the London loop. 2 months of another wait there would have then taken him to the exact day of September 3, 1943, where the peculiar children were about to board the ship. So, in hope to meet the Emma did not actually reset at all. It was a constant struggle till he reached her ear. Do you remember how smug and his unsurprised grandpa I was when Jake would find him and well, partly because he knew beforehand that Jake was a peculiar too. Also, he probably knew that Jake was already helping the bird. Now, one of the major reasons why grandfather knew that his grandson was a peculiar too was because he had listened to the phone call that Jacob then did into the year 1943, telling him how much he loved him and missed him. Mind blown. Anything you find more intriguing about Miss Pregrine's Home for Peculiar Children movie, drop it in the comments section below. I bumped the Miss Peregrine's series up on my TBR for two very good reasons. First, Tim Burton was working on the movie. I love Tim Burton and I see all the movie he makes. Second, I have a friend who was high school buddies with Ransom Riggs and who recommended that I read the book. He showed me a photo of Riggs standing and grinning next to Burton. Once the intense jealousy faded, I started seeing the broke books all around me. Since the covers and the ideas seemed to be intergoing, I thought how could this series do wrong? So far, the series an original trilogy. Miss Prison's Home for Peculiar Children, Hollow City, Library of Soul, as well as a companion book, Tales of the Peculiar, and a graphic novel version, Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children, the graphic novel by Riggs and Cassandra Jean. I read all of the above, but have obviously not read the second trilogy, which began release last year 2016-17. I have also seen the Burton movie. Let's talk about how his series came to be. Ransom Riggs had a collection of old photos. He decided to make a book containing the photo. A book agent said to him, "No, why don't you make a novel containing the photo?" Riggs said, "Sure," and started connecting with other old photo collectors and coming up with a story. For real, that's how it started. The series centers around Jacob, who thinks he is just a normal dude, who is most definitely living a normal and a slightly depressing life, whose grandpa used to tell him extraordinary stories, which turned out to be extraordinary lies. Drama of all sorts in shows, romance, emerges, family and friends, bad guys, white spaces, better guys, aliens like and magic like character and situation, and lots of action. I was surprised by the series in many ways. First off, judging from the covers and from its locality, I did not realize that it was until I actually started reading. Then it was like, now could you miss it? The writing's plot. Everything screams fire, but even more that this book's story is saying a lot in the modern climate of fantasy. While fresh and interesting, sure, we are not surprised by a teenager boy coming of age as he discovers a magical truth. But we are surprised by the originality of the fantastic themselves. I don't want to spoil too much for you, but the whole idea of cares with old ability being hidden in this group is just enough different Not to mention Yambrans, Whites, and Hollow Gas. The series is rich with images and the situation, which is a part along the tone, are what probably drew Burton to it. But beyond the dark, eerie, even scary tone and the idea, I found reading this series to be frustrating. It was just to be very via, and I kept feeling like this writer has too much potential to shove it all into the wire box. Not that wire can't be great writing, but then it ends up in transcending age limit. This did not and is more than that. The writing at the beginning of the first book was much different than what it became later on. For a while, we actually go deep into the Jacob. We live in those moments and see Florida and his life clearly. Then which always seemed to be me like a deadline approached and writing and editing got less careful. The writing speeds up, making first person feel silly and just lost me for the rest of the series. I kept hoping the spurious writing and a better voice would return, be it never did. What tricks just deliver on the whole series in action. Things are always moving, which may seem like I am asking for opposite, but he could have packed in all that fascinating action while still keeping the writing lighter and his exploration into the characters and the setting deeper. These books are not one right, but I found myself wanting to show them for sport so that I could linger on what was important beside what Jacob gives us the beginning. I never felt I got to know any characters well enough. There was also some issue with the mute character. Riggs could have kept her like that her being fun, but she needed to be more active. In fact, I believe the heir, his editor, realizes the problems, which is why she is written out for a long term. I feel as controversial as I think I probably was. At any rate, her disappearance remains wide. And speaking of the sporting characters, Riggs made the rookie mistake of introducing too many characters at once. I am not saying I have never done it, just that it's bad idea unless you can come up with some other way for the reader to distinguish between them and remember them. Never since Russian illiterate, I didn't have so much trouble remembering who each of the children were. Digging deeper into the character, as I mentioned above, may have helped with his in the end. The blows at the beginning of the second book really have to grown me when I could not find any way. I was hopelessly lost by time and the first. And speaking of the beginning of the book, I have always wondered what it would be like to get into a book later in a series. Without all the probable, turns out it not the best idea. At least there, it was so certain. Starting without all the explanation is one thing, but starting without finesse is another. Must keep this in mind. The book also ends similarly abruptly, which makes me think that writing series so that each book as a complete nugget is there. After all this time, the way to go. Of course, the photos are a large part of what makes his series special and cool. However, I hated that photos cut out the narrative. Instead of it continuing to bottom of page, I am a Greek when it comes to font and emergence and all term. But this was just a poor and unprofessional looking. Also, the writing and the plot were sometimes forced one way or another in order to fit with the photo or introduce a new one. There were too many photos worked into the story in order to include them. Perhaps Riggs should have just let photos exist like an illustration instead of having to explain them. I loved and not a good way of when the characters came across a photo tapped to an outdoor net on a side of a cliff. This just happened to show someone using so that they know how to use it. And for the side card, my middle grade series was charted the many years long before these books were published, let alone read by me. It has absolutely nothing in common with his series anyhow. In the end, I would recommend this series with reservations. I know that AI scholars are going to continue to enjoy this series for years to come, and they should, but I was frustrated continually by the detonations writing style and the surface character as well as my uses of the otherwise cool photo. The action kept me hanging in, as it will for many readers. At a point, it makes sense, and I am sure die-hard fans enjoyed it. However, I just did not have enough stories for me. Just not that reading a book for short fiction is easy peasy, because it is not in a series thought the tales is clearly much longer, and true, or perhaps he could have told it a piece of the choice. Anyhow, the stories are pretty cool and they contribute to the feeling that the fantasy world is complete. Like Tolkien or Rowling, really, he could stick with it for an entire career. The best of the whole thing, the graphic novel. When I came across this, I had a moment, as in the series should have all been done as a graphic novel. Really, the art is beautiful and includes the photo is a cool way. And the whole concept just really worked this way. However, there is only to one big maybe just say that I read Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children, House City, the Library of Soul. Tales of the Peculiar and Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children, the graphic novel by Ransom Riggs, the last book contained The Art of the Cassandra Jean. They were all published by Quick, published in 2011-14. Usually, I found some of the changes in character to be irritating, which I am sure many others fans did, as well as I can see my button did it, but sometimes other choices, let alone fans, should. Miss Peregrine comes from Tim Burton, whose releases have dramatically disappointed since his massive allies in Wonderland treat $34 million domestic. Their combined grosses total $200 million less. At a reported 110 productions budget, Miss Peregrine is actually less expensive than earlier allies or the subsequent Dark Shadow, based on a popular children's fantasy novel. Its best hope is to capture some of the appeal of the Harry Potter series. Its advances reviews are mixed, but they are at the level of Allies, which in 2010 launched Disney's judgment of live-action classic Raiders. Advanced estimates suggest that will end up closer to $30 million or even less for a weekend. Not a disaster, but hardly stellar. They will elevate pursuits on both its domestic multiple and international reaction. Of note is the unusual positioning at the stage of the fall of an expensive film aimed at the Harry Potter crowd, reaching for school-age kids as well as element to draw older Judy Bridge. It's another example of a crowded calendar, forcing studios to book expensive film on an unlikely date out of necessity. For Scott with a Deadpool in February. So if this exceeds expectations, what will increase their curious for expected success, defying releases that norms. For more vulnerable is long scared with a deep water horizon. Their hope is that compelling character actor Patrick Berg, Hancock and the lone survivor, with the often reliable lone survivor star Mark Wahlberg. This $150 million plus project is not Berg's most expensive. That distinction goes to mega flop Battleship at over $200 million, which only managed $65 million domestic with a $25 million start. It managed to overseas to reach $300 million, reducing its losses. This retailing of the Gulf of Mexico oil rig disaster is getting better advanced review than Survivor, but does not necessarily boast its built-in war appeal to men. And Deepwater Horizon likely needs to thrive with the older audiences who have boosted Sully and the Magnificent Seven, which are both still drawing well. This is a big bet from Lionsgate, which will also release at Christmas with partner CBC Film. Another Berg Wahlberg trimming, the Boston's marathon drama Patriots Day. This will likely trail Miss Peregrine and struggle to reach $20 million. That number for this budget is problematic, but it will not make for break its studio. That can't be said for Mastermind. The more than a year delayed releases from Relatively, which needed to emerge from bankruptcy. That done. This bank robbery comedy of some uncertain cost must make a decent showing. Director Jared has With max reviews so far, it will take clicking on our calendar to get this to minimal success. Expect to it lag. $10 million is an optimistic total. No comedy has broken out since Bad Moms some weeks back, so this might benefit from the recent dirt, but it could end up no better than 6 adding slot among the other holders and then won't help relatively cause. Queen of Courtway expand to around 1500 theatre after a sporty initial result at 52 locations. The early days resulted in a best possible A plus CinemaScope, which combined with the active targeted marketing give it a shot at improved a word of mouth result, but it looks to end up at a lower end of top 10. Among the limited releases, the two getting the most attention are Daniel Bleecker Citrate and American Honey. Daniel, which premiered in Toronto, starred Richard Weisz, Timothy Spall, and Tom Mixon in a recounting of a British okay. Trial Our Holocaust Daniel. It debuted at key New York and Los Angeles theater with the modesty positive. Earning strong kudos since it Cannes competitive premiere is American Honey 824 from acclaimed British director Andrea Arnold. Her first American-made film is an ambitious road movie starring Shia LaBeouf and Riley Keough, an example of unknown in a story about a runaway girl who gets caught up with a ragtag cross-country magazine sales team. Clocking in at over 2.5 hours, with appeal to a more limited audiences, the movie has secured top theater of 824's Biocastle opening. Walking back to the car after a recent screening of Miss Peregrine, Home for Peculiar Children, my movie-savvy nearly 7-year-old son took my hand and asked me, "Sweetie mommy, what was it about?" The short answer, which probably was not terribly helpful to him, was his X-Men meets grounding day. The real answer, which required a lot of stumbling and bumbling and twist and turn, went for more lengthy and probably not terrible helpful either, because even thought I would just seen the exact same my son had. I was not sure I completely understood it either. The latest adventure from Tim Burton would seem tailor made for his taste, but it's a convoluted slog, dense mythology and explanatory dialogue, but woefully lacking in thrill. It's been a matter of diminishing return with Burton for the past several years now. Between Alice in Wonderland, Dark Shadow, and Big Eyes, also he animated. Found the directors in park in retro from Miss Pregrine's Home for Peculiar Children allow him to show only brief glimmer of the gleefully twisted greatness of his early work, such as the PV, Big Adventure, and Beetlejuice. The characters here are supposed to be delightfully, or at least interesting, simply because they are superficially odd, and it just is not enough anymore. Too often it feels like we have seen this movie before and seen it done better. Also, the film based on the novel by Ransom Dick is populated by an assortment of specular as they are unknown. Kids born with unusual abilities that make it difficult for them to live in the outside world. Precious few of them feel like actual human beings whose lonely plight might scare some emotional resonance. There is a Emma, the pretty blonde who has to wear hat shoes so he does not fly away. There is Olive, a tarry head, who has to wear gloves so that does not accidentally set things on fire. There is a girl with a revenue hidden on the back of her head. The invisible boy who likes to play ticket. The girl who can make things grow super fast. The boy who can project images through his eyeball. The creepy masked wind. They fit in and out. Do you think they do? And then they are gone without leaving much impact. Their leader is the stylish and the formidable Miss Almus Leafy Fragrance, played by the Ava Green, who nearly saves the day simply by showing up with that vampy, rewriting screen presence of her, with a shocking swoops of midnight, blue hair and an array of gorgeous gowns from frequented Burton costume designer. Colleen Atwood she has the ability to manipulate time and turn into a bird, which seems unrelated but they is not enough. She also has to be extra quickly by smoking a pipe. And the seemingly regular kid who stumbles upon all these freaks are the Greek in the incredibly boring Jack, played by Hugo Starr as the Butterfield. He is our wide-eyed contact, so of course he has to function as a straight man in such a wildy, fanciful world. But there is just nothing to him, and the young British actor's American accent seems to flatten him further. You may have noticed I have not tried to describe the plot yet. Yes, I am procrastinating shy teenage Jake live in a bland tract house in a suburbs Florida on the same street as Edward Scissorhands. Possibly he dreams of being an explorer. He says, but he would seem to like the requests. Get up and go. As he is left, he heard his beloved grandfather, who departed far too quickly, tell him outlandish stories about his own youth on an island of the coast of Wales, where he grew up at an orphanage for mysteries with magical power. After Grandpa dies under mysterious circumstances, Jay convinces his parents, Chris or David, and after setting the unjustice Kim Dakin, with the help of his grief counselor, that he should visit the island and try to find his mysterious home in hope of achieving closure. That takes along to take protagonists of birds and drink beer at a pub full of crotchety locals. Cinematographer Bruno Del Bonal, whose work includes the Coen brothers' Lucius. When Jake finally does find his stately Gothic home his grandfather had told him about, that discovers it's not in ruin, the result of a bombing decades earlier during World War VIII. But once he steps inside and begins investigating, the inhabitants there to pop their heads out, and the place comes colorfully to life. Seems they are stuck in time loop, doomed to repeat the same day in the September 1943 right up until the moment the Nazi bomb fell on them. This time, conscious Miss Peregrine explained that she winds up the clock back 24 hours at the end of each night, just before the moment of destruction, allowing everyone to relive that day all over again. Does not that sound fun? Are you still paying attention? Anyway, for some reason, all the kids want Jack to stick around, ostensibly because they have not seen a fresh face in about 70 years, and he is will do. But they are all in the danger, you see. X-Men what here are also had once. Here they are be peculiar who use their power to take away their time loops or something, and the way they stay alive is by eating people's eyeball or something. Their leader is a courtly jet menacing Mr. Baron Samuel, plays with the kind of scenery Cindy chewing the code during this sleep. But what they want is never clear, so they are never truly frightening. The supposedly epic collisions between good and evil result in exactly one exciting action set pieces. It involves stop motions animated skeleton battling in an army of long-limbed, eye-goggling mercenary gangs at a hard work amusement park, and is the whole only scene that vividly recalls the kind of artistry and absurd humor that long have been Burton's trademark, and the specular who make it all happen has the most useful and the most ethically intriguing ability of all. Anush can bring things back to life, a person a creepy doll by inserting a beating heart into it. Unfortunately, thought it ends up being just another cog in a particularly but machinery. I admit upfront that the review of Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children is from the perspective of someone who truly enjoyed the Renaissance Rings novel on which the novel movie is based. I have heard that people unfamiliar with the book have appreciated directed Tim Burton's fantasy adventure a lot more. Regardless, even if used slowly as cinematic experiences, a Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children is very flawed and unsatisfying. To outline the plot first, Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children centers on a teenage Jack who has not come to terms with the death of his grandfather Ab. Jack saw something in the shadow on the night his grandfather died, and this fact combined with cryptic message drives Jake to the tiny Welsh island where Abe lived during World War II. There, thanks to the help of some magical time travel, Jack discovers the children's home where his grandfather stayed. Jack missing home quickly and misses Miss Peregrine, peculiar friends with special power. Gets a love interest and finds purpose. This is a good thing, seeing as Samuel Jackson and his fellow monsters are coming for the kids. The first problem with the Miss Peregrine's home for peculiar children is the pacing. The whole thing feels incredibly rushed. Some scenes seem to occur even before characters finish speaking, in a mark of a poor adaptation trying to fit in every single plot beat. The film is full of jeering, jump, and a plot hole. There is also an especially noticeable tonal shift right before the climax. I suspect that even viewer unfamiliar with the novel will be able to identify his moment as the point where the source material, where its contained narrative focus is abandoned in favor of a large, crowd-pleasing battle. This extended light scene individually striking at least, but there is still a very real sense that the film suffers because such a large break from everything that preceded it. Having until this point that alternate revealing in America and forcing wonder down viewers' throat. The movie goes completely over the top in the end. Burton has always been a director who encourages his actors to cast aside their inhabitation and just go for it. In Jackson's case, that is detrimental as his performance in the final 30 minutes is so goofy and that is distracting. Green is fortunately absent from the scene during the same period, so her portrayal of a cookie OCD mother hen who micromanages her charges by the second manages to unchained. The peculiar children at least are interesting and charming. More than could have been spent exploring the bond and rivalries between the six or at least oldest, who received the most story focus. It's up to the young actor to do the emotional heavy lifting, while the adult cast him it up. With the exception of Chris Dowd as Jokes, John Bate, Dad, and a completely wasted Judi Dench. There are a handful of moments in Miss Peregrine's home for peculiar children that feel very time button isque. You can understand why the director was drawn to this project. It is basically its chance to make Harry Potter by way of X-Men. However, given the speed of proceedings, the audiences just receive glimpse of magic and never the opportunity to feel ordinary. Some viewer may get caught up in the visual spectrum with all its wildness, and it may be enough. Personally thought, even in this department, I found the film standing out to be odd, and its war form sufficient. Combined with the unreadable 3D, it's all very disappointing. As a final note, parents with young, sensitive children may want to be cautious when it comes to the Miss Peregrine's home for peculiar children. There's a good deal of nightmarish content that may frighten them. By my count, it's been 9 years since I liked the Tim Burton movies when we told the Demon's Barber of Face Street and a whopping 20 cents. I loved one Mars actors. I had begun to think that I would lose all affection. We know Tim Burton's Batman. We came very close to seeing his Superman. And if you ever wanted to know that Burton's X-Men would look like, here is your chance. For not only does Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children come from Fox, the studio that owns Marvel's Mighty Mutants, and is written by Jan Goldman, who was responsible for one of the best films in the franchise, X-Men. First Class about is about a home for gifted youngster who possesses frightened and shocking ability that cause the outside world to hate and fear them. Okay, here the setting is not presented well. Mostly New York, but 1943 Wales. The kids are not called mutants, rather they are peculiar. And their actress is not a bad block in a wheelchair, but evergreen in all her evergreen glory. The movie Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children seems like every movie that covers the topic of strange children with a superpower. However, as the plot starts to reveal itself, the storyline opens an entirely new world with much more than the audience is expected. The characters are well developed and in a little bit over 2 hours, the fans are thrilled by the end result. Every role is different from the next, and this is what makes the movie interesting. From their power to be tragic life they all lead, It is all worth saying, however, if fans had to choose which character was their all-time favorite, who would pick? The characters of Mrs. Baron was portrayed by the legendary Samuel L. Jackson, and although he is an extremely talented actor of pulp fiction, Grand Theft Auto San Andreas and Star Wars, his character is the main antagonist of the story and spends most of the movies trying to hunt down the specular children for his own ambitions. It's not exactly hard to see why many people dislike his character since he seemed to have no ethical or moral boundaries. Dr. Goldens, by the Academy Award winning Allison, Jenny is a psychiatrist who has been possessed by Mr. Barron and also the one who encourages Jack Portman to find the island where the loop happens. Our characters such as Dr. Golden can't be exactly hated, since it is not directly their fault and for what he has been said and done his viewer, and not expected to form any kind of specific relationship. It's a character that is easily forgotten as soon as the movie comes to the end. Frank Portman cases is a Jack's father and a person who has he sent to discover the true story behind the children's home. He is an ordinary father's figure who wishes the best for his child and who do anything to see Jack happy. Characters like Frank Portman usually have smart role and the audiences does not pay much attention to them since the main characters overshadow them. Their purpose is to assist where needed and that is about it. Enosh Connors is one of the gifted children who has the ability to animate objects to life simply performing a minor surgery while placing a heart of an animal in their chest. However, this is only for a short amount of time. While he was rather strange and rude in the beginning, Enosh revealed there was a more caring and brave side to his personality. As the story progresses, it is just goes to slow that maybe one should never judge a book by its cover. Olive Arcohus Albenta is also one of the gifted teenage specular who lived under the care of Miss Peregrine. Despite having to go through life wearing black rubber gloves to protect those from her progenies, Olive does not let this get their own. In fact, she is seen to be quite sweet and kind. Her bravery is also something that the audiences account for. She will do whatever, despite having no go through life wearing black rubber gloves to protect those from the prognosis. Olive does not let this get her down. In fact, she is seen to be quite sweet and kind. Her bravery is also something that the audiences account for as she will do whatever she can to protect her family. Miss Avocal, played by the notorious James Bond, is a very special character in the movie. She is wrong and willing to sacrifice her life to save the children. Her story is tragic since her students were slaughtered by the hog as he was desperately fighting to save them. Related Joji Dench for best 5 star films according to. When a character has lived through a great tragedy and the story is shown to the audiences, it is mostly like that they feel immediate respect and empathy toward the character. Also, Judi Dench is a legend that many people are in awe of just by her appearing on the screen. Abraham Ezra Portman, better known as Abby, is the grandfather of Jack, who introduces him to the new world on the island for the audiences. Abby is a very important character since through him they are able to understand the entire story of how the home for peculiar children functions and his story. Fans believe this that at the hands of the Holocaust is heartbreaking and cruel is it a moment where the good guys lose one of their most valuable assets. Alma's leafy Peregrine's portrait by the iconic Ava Green is the headmistress of the school of the specular children, which is also considered their safe haven. She is sharp, smart, beautiful, and very capable, which makes her the perfect main character. She is respected by her students and loved by the fans and audiences. Her dedication to protecting the children at all costs is admirable for everyone, yet tragic for her. Her ability to manipulate him time is the one reason why the children and the school survive for so long. Jacob Magdalene Portman, although he stars and withdraws, the journey is the island and his adventures reveal a true hero. He is very scrappy and he uses every bite of the information to save himself and the rest of the children. Harfully devotes himself to every goal, so he is successful in the outcome, which is a cause of a great deal of respect. Emma Bloom is one of the other heroic specular children. When audiences first meet her, it is revealed that her power are all arithmetic. She is shown to be extremely trusting and loyal, putting her life on the line on several occasions to protect her friend. Since she was also seen to be Jacob's love interest, the audiences get to learn a lot about her character, more in comparison to all the other. So it's not really hard to see why Fangs like her. In Miss Peregrine's Home for Specular's Children, there is as much power in the being observant, clever, and resourceful as there is the ability to turn invisible or bring life to doll. Without possessing intelligence and having wits about them, the gifted awards of the Miss Peregrines would never be able to survive in a world that does not accept them, and with creatures that want to devour them. Whether it's because of the trait of Mr. Balance the white wheat who desire immortally, or the unimaginative humans who cannot comprehend the appeal of the speculative every character in Time Batter's lavish fantasy tale has to think on their feet. However, some are just more intelligent than others. Our humans like Mr. Pragre's Miss Advocate is the headmistress of a shelter, very much like Miss Pragre's home for peculiar children. Except in the Blackpool, she has the ability to transform into a bird and advocate and can manipulate them like any other young brand. She has a wish to escape from her home at the same time that Mrs. Barron and his hallows attack, but just barely. She is also of great help to Miss Peregrine and her ward by the time they have to face their own hallow. A polite and well-dressed young boy, Horace Samson's hydran killer stone, often keeps to himself in the gardens of the Mr. Pregrine's shelter. He does not participate in many of the other children's games, but prefers to have the snow suck in the book. When he does engage with the other, it's helping to facilitate move night. His peculiar power is being able to protect what he dreamed through a monocle, which sometimes ends up being prophetic and gives her children an edge over Mrs. Barron and the Hallow. Surely an antisocial, Enos spends most of his time in his room, reuniting dirt things and manipulating them like creepy puppet. He is upset about being stuck in the same time period. On the same day, for the rest of his life, and longs for a chance to live like a normal person. As one of the eldest children at Miss Peregrine's shelter, he has such a responsibility to his younger ward, and he protects them as best he can. He certainly delivers despite his colorish personality, and is not shy about showing off his creation, with the ability to set anything alight, given the slightest touch. Olive has to wear special gloves at all times lest she accidentally start a spontaneous conflagration. She does remove one to help cover Jack's escape from a local pub before Emma ferries him and more of his Miss Pregrine's war to be manner. Olive is smart and resourceful but doesn't always show it, spending more of her time helping Enoch with his experiment so that he will notice her. She views her power as a handicap rather than a magical gift. Armed with the ability to turn himself invisible, Millard Cameron King can be quite the trickster, often using his special power to cheat at game with the other children or to simply scare them. His quick thinking and fast reactions end up helping the other characters stay alive. When Jack thinks he has the power to move objects with his mind, it turns out to be Millard who, after having tripped off his cloud, throws casually and dishes around the pub so that Jake can escape harm from the local. Emma has the power to manipulate air, thought it comes with some impedance. If she does not wear lead shoes, she will be float away into the atmosphere. She helps Jack understand his family history and even shows him her secret hideout under water, which ends up saving the day when the children need a new loop. As intelligent as she is kind, Emma ends up becoming she love interest for Jake, who ends up following in his grandfather's footsteps in more ways than one. Some of her comments came to even suggest a sequel could happen after Jake discovered the means to see her again in a different loop. The most cunning of all the weight, Mr. Balance Hummel is a shapeshifter with the ability to disguise himself in a variety of human forms. This allows him to hide in a plain sight, even posing as a Jake's colon at one point to pull him into a false sense of security. Mr. Barron desires above all else to be the most powerful wight imaginable, but to do this, he feels he must gain immortality, something he thinks will happen by draining a yam brain. When the experiment fails and he must discover how to regain human form, his devices are distractedly planned for him and he is followed, consuming the eyes of the speculator. Jack's grandfather as Portman has a unique ability to see hollows where others cannot, making him an invaluable member of Miss Peregrine's home when Mrs. Barron and his ghastly minions attack. If she can help protect them, and he later lays his goal to hunt them down around the world in other loops. When Jake is a baron, Ab leaves his life hard adventure behind and settles into a life in these suburbs, where he entertains Jake with the stories of the family. Things are the ravings of an old man. Ab eventually dies at the hands of one of Mr. Barron's hollow, but not before he can tell his grandson to find Miss Peregrine and his old friends. He leaves clues for Jake because he knows he will be able to continue with his artistic work. Jake is a normal teenager working at a drugstore before his life takes a turn for the peculiar. After his beloved grandfather is killed, he learns that all of the stories he was told as a child are true and that he is destined to take up his grandfather's calling. Blessed with Abe's peculiar power to see hollow, he becomes an integral part of Mrs. Peregrine's home. Jack is resourceful and innovative, which makes him an asset to Miss Peregrine's hand overward. By being able to move between term loops like his grandfather, he is able to discover another way to allocate them again even after their original loop is closed. As a champion is in charge of our loop, Miss Peregrine's Evergreen must be exceptionally clever and vigilant. Her ability to manipulate time makes her very observant, and she is often able to predict things that seem spontaneous and a perception drawn to be exact sound they will occur. She is the main reason her wars have survived as long as they have. Eventually, she requires the help of Jake Portman to move them to another loop. For the most part, she always has a trap ahead of Mrs. Whatever because of the threat of the Mrs. Baron Wait who desire immortality, or the unimaginative humans who cannot comprehend the appeal of the practically every character in Tim Burton's lavish fantasy tales has to think on their feet, however, somehow just more intelligent than other. I am pleased like his Mr. Peregrine's Miss Advocate is the headmistress of a shelter very much like Miss Peregrine's home for peculiar children, except in the Blackpool she has the ability to transform into a bird and avocet and manipulate them like any other young brain. She has the wish to be escape from home at the same time that Mrs. Barron and his fellows attack. She is also of great help to Miss Peregrine and her wards by the time they have to face their own halo. Applet and a well-dressed young boy, Horace Samuelson Hyde and Killer Stone, often keep to himself in the gardens of Mr. Pregrine's shelter. He does not participate in many of other children's games, puts before to have his one stuck in a book. When he does engage with the others, it's helping to facilitate move night. His peculiar power is being able to project what he dreams through a monkel, which sometimes ends up being patriotic and gives the children an edge over Mrs. Barron and the Hallows. Surely an antisocial Anosh spends most of his time in his room re-emulating dead things and manipulating them like a creepy puppet. He is upset about being stuck in the same time period on the same day for the rest of his life and longs for a chance to live like a normal person as one of the eldest children. At Miss Peregrine's shelter, he has a certain responsibility to her younger ward and he protects them as best he can. He is certainly clever despite his Jewish personality and does not shy about showing off his creation with the ability to set anything alight given the slightest touch. Olive has to be wear special gloves at all times lest she accidentally starts a spontaneous conflagration. She does remove one to help cover Jack's escape from a local pub before Emma fires him and more of Miss Pregrine's ward to the manner. Olive is smart and resourceful but does not always show it, spending more of the time helping Enoch with his experiment to so that he will notice her. She views her power as a handicap rather than a magical gift. Armed with the ability to turn himself invisible, Mallet Cameron King can be quite trickers, often using his peculiar power to cheat at games with the other children or to simply scare them. He quick thinking and the fast reactions end up helping the other characters stay alive. Emma has the power to manipulate air too. It comes with some independence. If she does not wear she will be float away into the atmosphere. She helps Jack understand his family history and even show him her secret hideout. underwater, which ends up seemingly dry when his children need a new loop. As intelligent as she is kind, Emma ends up becoming the love interest for Jake, who ends up following in his grandfather's footsteps in more ways than one. Some of her comments seem to even suggest a sequel could happen after Jake discovers that means to see her again in a different loop. The most cunning of all divides, Mrs. Barron, is a shapeshifter with the ability to disguise for himself in a variety of human forms. Mr. Barron desires all else to be most powerful way imaginable, but due to this he feels he must gain immortality. Some things he can will be happen by the training again when the experiment fail, and he must discover how to regain human form. He devises out decidedly plan for him and his fellow bears, consuming the eyes of specular. Jake's grandfather, Portman, Terence Stamp, has a unique ability to see halo, where others cannot, making him an invaluable member of his Miss Peregrine home. When Mrs. Barron and his ghastly minions attack, Abby can help protect them, and he later leaves the school to hunt them down around the world in other loops. When Jack is born, Abe leaves his life of high adventure behind and settles into a life of the suburbs. When he entertains Jake with his stories, the family thinks are the ravings of an old man. Abby eventually dies at the hands of one of Mr. Barron's Hallow, but not before he can tell his grandson to find Miss Peregrine and his old friends. He leaves a clue for Jake because he knows he'll be able to continue with his artistic work. Jake is a normal teenager working in a drugstore before his life takes a turn for the specular. After his beloved grandfather is killed, he learns that all of the stories he was told as a child are true, and this is a destined to make up his grandfather's calling. Plus, with Ab's specular power to his halo, he becomes an integral part of Mrs. Peregrine's home. Jake is a resourceful and innovative, which makes him an asset to Miss Peregrine and her wards. By being able to move between time loops like his grandfather, he is able to discover another way to allocate them again after the original loop is closed. As the brain is a charge for her loop, Miss Peregrine's evergreen must be exceptionally clever and vigilant. Her ability to manipulate time makes her very observant, and she is often able to predict things dumb seen, spontaneous and capricious dawn to be exact second they will occur. She the main reasons her words have survived as long as they have. Eventually, this requires the help of Jacob Portman to move them to another loop. For the most part, she is always kept ahead of Mrs. Barron and Hallows. Miss Peregrine's Home for Specular Children could have become a full-fledged franchise, but a second movie never happened. Directed by the Tim Burton, the fantasy film adapted the eponymous best-selling book by Ransom Riggs, which is the first in the series. The novel gained attention before it was published, with studios grabbing screenwriting early in its production. The movie ended with the titular children having for another place to live after their home was destroyed. This opened the door for Miss Peregrine's Home for Specular Children too. The film all very well at the box office, grossing almost $300 million with only a $110 million budget via Box Office Mojo. However, it received mixed review. In true Tim Burton fashion, Miss Peregrine's Home for the Specular Children pulled out all the stops visually and thematically, captivating audiences with his dramatic effect. However, those effects were not enough to compensate of the lackluster plot. There was high hopes after the Burton took on the directing role, and it is far from his worst film. His reputation was not enough to the Warner Studios producing a Miss Peregrine's sequel. Despite nearly doubling its production cost in ticket sale, Miss Peregrine's Home for Specular Children does not quite make it by Hollywood standard. It made $28.9 million at the box office during its opening weekend, and that was above projection. It was a mediocre start given its extensive budget. There were high expectations for the film, but as its Rotten Tomatoes score of 64% demonstrated, it fell short of them. The Hollywood bust was its high criticism from critics and general audiences alike, but it so earning this slashed its chance at the franchise. Unlike movie today, the movie also did not have the benefit of streaming or digital sales to boost perception of right away. A word of mouth did not spread enough for the movies to gain traction with audiences, and it is unlikely a sequel for the movie would be made following its 2016 release at this point. Although Miss Peregrine's Home for Specular Children was not a big enough hit to warrant a sequel, it fared pretty well compared to several other Tim Burton's movies. Now for the getting visual and dark subject matter, the prolific filmmaker has had his fair share of flop, whether due to the poor box office opening or poor reception. Some movies that consistently make Burton's worst movie is incredible. Alice is the Wonderland versus Attack that planned of the apps when we mixed reviews for some of his films. It's impossible to deny his effect on pop culture and his iconic style. While Miss Pregne's Home for Specular Children did not quite make the cut for franchise's success, it was still a loved film among some fans of book. The project's mediocre reception was nothing new for Burton, but it held its own against other additions to his filmmaking portfolio. What is unlikely Miss Pregne's Home for Specular Children 2 will ever happen. Fans can continue the series in novel format as Ransom Riggs has written 8 books set in this. Thought it was a several books in the particular series. It would be most logical to adapt his next novel in the series as a sequel. Hollow City is the second novel in the series, and it picks up and long after the novel ends. At this point, if the novel were to be adapted for the screen, it would require not recasting or a significant time jump instead, allowing the characters to age before they enter another term, which would allow the broad stroke of the novel to play out. Ella Pornell and Asa Butterfield have since found success in the television series with the former starring in a Yellow Jackets and the Fallout, and the latter starring in the Prophecy and Sex Education. Their busy work schedules would likely necessitate recasting of the characters at this point. Hollow City sees most of the main characters from this first novel return to Jacob, and Emma try to find a way to get Miss Peregrine unstuck from the harbor from. They so do traveling to be a new time loop where they hope to meet another woman like her. Miss Father their plans as usual in an adventure story like this one go away. Jacob and Emma encounter peculiar who are animal instead of human, a new traveling companion, and discover a new enemy that has been working alongside she holographs of the first story. Some of those enemies have a surprising connection to Miss Abrasion and provide a new twist to the story that the audiences would not see coming. The second novel depends the lore of the first by expanding the power sets of the character, venturing to new time loops, and introducing new villains and the monsters. It would be the perfect follow-up to the first movie if it ever gets made. Unfortunately, with so much time having unfortunately after the release of the Miss Progress Home for Specular Children, it seems unlikely unless the movie franchise undergoes a complete reboot. Tim Burton has no better time to get any dream project made than he does right now. After a few years of feelings like the studio system was beating him down, Burton finally got a chance to make a sequel to one of his most beloved cult films, and it was a massive success. Justice has a 77% Rotten Tomato score, which is certified fresh by critics. It also has an even high 81% popcorn meter score, and Burton has said it regenerated his love for filmmaking once again. Beetlejuice has also divided the box office and it became one of 2004 bigger hits, especially around the Halloween season. Since the film has Burton's signature style and humor, something missing in many of his recent releases. Burton's caring could bring back Miss Pregne's Home for Specular Children in a form that is more like what he might have wanted before, but with more creative control this time. Of course, there is a few big problem with bringing back Miss Pregne's Home for Specular Children is a sequel movie. Where bringing back Eva Green would be a welcome movie for a filmmaker. The kids have all outgrown the film and it would drain all of new kids. This would be a disaster for continuing the book stories. With that in mind, the franchise has a better opportunity. If Tim Burton wants to reincarnate it, it could make it as a television show reboot. Other past movies that failed at the box office have seen success as a TV series reboot. The Spider-Verse Chronicles was brought back as a TV show and to a more successful level. Disney Plus rebooted Percy Jackson to great critical acclaim. The biggest came to Max when Harry Potter got a 10th season series order, with Burton having great success with the Wednesday on Netflix. Getting a mixed progress series of a streaming service could do the novel series a great justice and have better chance for success. While there are no plans for a new Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children movie, sequel or streaming series, there are still plenty of great show and movie out there fans can watch to get the same feeling. The biggest of this time is Burton's directed episodes of Wednesday. Burton would be perfect to direct the big screen Adams Family movie, and having him handle Wednesday series was a great success. As in the magical school, and the series has much in common with Miss Peregrine. Sticking with Netflix's is streaming series Vision of Lemon Lee Snicket, a series of unfortunate events is another that has a lot in common. With Miss Peregrine's home for specular children, the kids are in danger. There is a sense of magic and mystery, and even more importantly, the intro design and feel of the series is right out of the Tim Burton's playbook, even he had nothing to do with the show. As for film, there are several that fit the same themes and the style of Miss Peregrine's home for specular children, and it is best to start with the Tim Burton movie. From Beetlejuice and the Edward Scissorhands to Big Fish and Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. There is a plenty to choose from featuring the look, feel, and sense of the wonderment and that only Tim Burton can provide. I have wanted the underrated 2010s fantasy movie, Miss Peregrine's A Home for Specular Children, to get a sequel for an year, but I am finally admitting it will not happen. Released in 2016, Miss Peregrine's Home for Specular Children is based on a 2011 novel of the same name by Rosa Riggs and follows teenager Jack Portman Asa, who uncovers a mystery that spans throughout the film. Finding himself in a Miss Peregrine's home for specular children, the specular each has different powers and live inside a time loop house at Fall Cemetery, 1943, which keeps their existence a secret. Miss Peregrine's Home for Specular Children was directed by Tim Burton and it grossed 26.5 million at the box office worldwide, doubling its production budget of $110 million. Yet, despite its box office success and the Burton's notoriety, the fantasy movie has not released a sequel in 9 years since. Miss Peregrine's Home for Specular Children received mixed reviews from critics due to its filmy plot, especially considering the moment of horror the original book offered. However, the film is far from the Burton's worst movie, and I have been beloved that Miss Peregrine's Home for Specular Children deserves a sequel. Miss Peregrine's Home for Specular Children certainly deserves a sequel, despite its lukewarm reception because Ransom Riggs' fantasy universe has much more to offer. Following the movie's opening weekend in 2016, Fox's chief of domestic retributions, Chris Anderson, spoke to Variety about the possibility of a sequel, stating that it's a compromising start but it's too early to tell. There are multiple books and they are bestsellers, so the door is open. The fact that there is so much literary content available to adapt into a movie proved promising for a potential Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children sequel. One of the main criticisms of the 2016 movie was its approach to the lore. Tim Burton has always been brilliant at creating visually speculative movies, but critics felt that Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children fell flat into its story, especially considering how fantasy the books are. This can be felt in the film, as Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children seems to focus more its visual than constructing a compelling narrative that makes you want more film. Consequently, I think the fantasy movie deserves a sequel in order to rectify this, including more of the book's lore. The movie was nominated for 20 more awards upon release, including 3 at the Teen Choice Awards alone, and it's a jam-packed cast, premiering at Fantastic Fest before hitting major markets on September 30. These Fox releases will caught viewer on the trend of Burton's commercial track record. Eva Green as a Butterfield and Samuel L. Jackson should also be a box office bonus. While Peculiar's children's greatest asset is that it will be the lone fantasy offering on the schedule for a few weeks. The studio, no doubt, hoping it's got a 4-quadrant Harry Potter esque film that could pave the way of a sequel. Adapted from the novel by Ransom Riggs, who published a follow-up in 2014. Peculiar Children stars Butterfield as Jake, a Florida teen living in the present day who discovered that his seemingly ordinary existence is far more complicated than he realized. After receiving a crypto warning from his dying grandfather, Trent Stamp, Jack ventures to remote Welsh island to find a disappeared mentioned that in reality exists in a magical 24-hour loop in which it always September 3, 1943, meeting with Miss Peregrine, the home director, Jack is introduced to his wards, all of whom have incredible power. At the time when comic book movies clocked the release calendar, Peculiar Children's motions of outcast grappling with superpower is hardly novel, and there's also say nothing franchises such as Harry Potter, Animatrix Inverse, and everything protagonist learn that he is destined for a great thing. But there is always room for new twists to narrative glitches, which is why it's even more troublesome that Burton's oversaw these adaptations from Beetlejuice to Edward Sessions' Hand to Dark Shadow to his feature length Frank Winnie. The filmmaker has cornered the market on sympathetic, slightly spiked portraits of the wives who are not comfortable in traditional society. However, that was once charming even survivor about these portrayals has long since codified into a cookie cutter dawdle stick and that trample over any potential emotional resourcefulness. Johnny Goldsman's script view Jake as a directness teen who never felt like he belonged, but the character does not evolve so much as he becomes our guide through peculiar children, elaborately constructed universe. Far too much of the film, which is to be expected from Burton, is shot beautifully by cinematographer Bruno Del Bonel and production designed, immaculated by Given Bucket, unconscious explaining the mechanisms behind the 24-hour time loop, the circumstances surrounding the house, and the motives of the threatening villains, including Samuel L. Jackson, is a campy cameo. For a movie that's event to have some magic in it, Peculiar Children's displays little buoyancy. The proceedings weighed down by tedious world building and perfectly thematic lip service about the need for community and the power that comes from finding one's voice. To be sure, Buttons provides us with a striking side. The image of children donning gags masked as Nazi flags hover aimlessly overhead, or lovely underwater sequences inside a sunken ship. But Peculiar Children is overrun by its visual Judas. The filmmaker showing more consideration for some stop motion side characters than he does this central love story between Jack and a beautiful young ward, Ella, who must wear heavy metal shoes so she does not float away. Butterfield is likable but negligible, although he is good for fit among a sporting cast of peculiar children who all seem low smart, raising the possibility that having superpower brings with it unfortunate side effect of robbing the characters of their personality. Green accuses herself as a child, gothic Miss Peregrine, but even this turned out to be a liability. It's touch obvious to cast the supermally vamp green in a Burton movie, and so there is no deliciousness in watching a mocking smile. In a filmmaker's world, she is just another piece of decoration. I bumped a Miss Peregrine series up on my TBR for two very good reasons. First, Tim Burton was working on the movie. I love Tim Burton and I see all the movies he makes. Second, I have a friend who was high school buddies with Ransom Riggs and who were recommended that I read a book. He showed me a photo of Riggs standing and grinning next to Burton. Once the intense jealousy faded, I started seeing the book all around me. Since the covers and the idea seemed so intriguing, I thought how could this series do wrong? Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children, Hollow City, Library of Soul, as well as a companion book, Tales of the Peculiar, and a graphic novel version, Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children, the graphic novel by Riggs and Cassandra Jean. I really read all the novel, but have obviously not read the second trilogy, which begins releases later this year. I have also seen the version. Let's talk about how this series came to be. Ransom Riggs had a collection of wide, old photos. He decided to make a book containing the photo. A book agent said to him, "No, why don't you make a novel containing the photo?" Riggs said sure, and started connecting with the other wide, old photo collectors and coming up with a story. For real, that's how this started. The series concenters around Jacob, who thinks he's just a normal dude, who is most definitely living a normal and slightly depressing life, whose grandpa used to tell him these extraordinary stories, which turned out to be extraordinary lies. When grandpa dies in a shocking incident, he lets Jacob clue to point him toward his past and Jacob's inevitable future. with the help of his psychiatrist. Jacob ends in a charcoal where's where Grandpa used to be an orphan and stumbled upon his adventures and the deep, unexpected truth. Drama falls short in shore, romance emerges. Family and friends, bad guys, white sons, better guys, alien-like and magical-like characters and the situation, and lots of action. I was surprised by the series in many ways. First off, judging from the cover and form of ubiquity, I later realized that I was a intern. I actually started reading. Then it was like, how could you miss it? The writing plot, everything scream. Yeah, but even more than that. This book story is saying a lot in modern climate of fantasy via fresh and interesting. Sure, we are now surprised by a teenage by coming of age as he is discovered of magical truth, but we are surprised by the originality of the fantasies themselves. I don't want to be spoiled too much for you, but the whole idea of kids with old abilities being hidden in time loops is just enough different. Not to be mentioned vampires read and Hollow Gaze, the series is rich with images and situations which is part along with the tone I would probably do button to it. But beyond the dark, it is even scary tone and the idea. I found reading this series to be frustrating. It was just so very weird, and I kept feeling like this writer has too much potential to shove it all into the wire box. Not that wire can't be great writing, but then it ended up transcending age limit. This did not end, it is more than that. The writing at the beginning of the first book was much different than what it is become later on. For a while, we actually too deep into Jacob. We live in the those moments and his Florida and his life clearly. Then which always seemed to be a like deadline approached and writing and the editing got less careful. The writing speeds up, making first persons feel silly and just lost me for the rest of the series. I kept hoping the superior writing and the better voices would return, but it never did. Varix does deliver on its whole series' action. Things are always moving, which may seem like I am asking for opposite, but he could have packed in all the fascinating action while still asking into the characters and sitting deeper. The book are not overdrive, but I found myself wanting to slow down for sport so that I could linger on what was important. Besides what Jacob gave us the beginning, I never felt I got to know my characters well enough. There were also some issues with the mute characters, Riggs, and could have kept her like that been fine, but she needed to be more active. In fact, I believe in for editor realizes the problems, which is why she is written out of her long term it feels as contrived as I think it probably was. At any rate, her disappearance, romance were bad. And speaking of the sporting director, Riggs made a rookie mistake after introducing too many characters at once. I'm not saying I have never done it, just that it's bad idea unless you can come up with some better way for the reader to distinguish between them and remember them never since Russian literature. And I have so much trouble remembering who each of the children were digging deeper into the character. As I mentioned above, my have helped with this in this and the abuse at the beginning of the second book really had to ground me when I could not find my way. I was hopelessly lost by the end of the first. And speaking of the beginning of the book, I have always wondered what it would be like to get into a book or later in a series without all the preamble turns out in the not best idea. At least here, it was too sudden. Starting without all the explanation is one thing, but starting without freshness is another must keep in mind. The book also ends similarly abruptly, when make me think that writing series so that each book is completely negate still. After all this time, the way to go. Of course, the photos are a large part of what makes each series special and cool. However, I hated that photos out of the narratives instead of continuing to bottom of age. I am a geek when it comes to fonts and medicine, all that. But this was just a poor and unprofessional looking choices. Also, the writing and plot were sometimes forced one way or anything. In order to fit with the photo or include a new one, there were too many photos worked into the story in order to include them. Perhaps Riggs should have just let me photos exist like an illustration instead of having to explain them. Lord, and not in a good way. When the characters come across a photo tapped on outdoor, not on the side of a cliff, we just happen to show someone using it so that they know how to use it. And for the record, my middle grade series was titled The Manageries long before these books are published. Let alone read by me, it has absolutely nothing in common with this series anyhow. In the end, I would recommend this series. With reservation, I know that high scholars are going to continue to enjoy this series for years to come. And they should, but I was frustrated to continue by the determining writing style and the surface character, as well as by the use of the otherwise cool photo. The action kept me hanging in, as it will for many readers. To it a point, it makes sense, and I am sure die hard fans enjoyed it. However, I just that did not have enough for stories for my taste. Now that writing a book of short fiction is easy peasy. Because it's not in the series, told the detail is actually early, much longer and true. Perhaps he could have sold it was a piece of the trail. Anyhow, the story are pretty cool and they contribute to the feeling that his fantasy world is complete like Tolkien and Rowling. Really he would stick with this for entire career. The best of the whole thing, the graphical novel. When I come across this, I had a moment as if the series should have been done as a graphic novel, really. The art is a beautiful and includes the photos is a cool way, and the whole concept is just really worked this way. However, this is only the one book, maybe just read it. I read is Miss Pegner's Home for Peculiar Children, Hollow City, and the Library of Soul. Tales of the Peculiar and Miss Pegner's Home for Peculiar Children. The graphic novel by Ransom Briggs, the last book contained the art of the Crusader Jane. They were published by Quick Publishing in 2011. I found some of the changes in characters by irritating, which I am sure my other fans did. As well, I can see my buttons did, but sometimes other choices. Let alone fans should just be honored. Otherwise, I thought they compressed the three stories rather than nicely and made some really cool actor choices, special effect moments, and the villain. Very why I even thought it is great atmosphere as well as button movies. Director Tim Burton's obscure interests have long provided audiences with entertaining nightmarish tales of monsters, ghosts, and all things imagination. His films in more recent years have been somewhat hit or miss. Dark Shadow, Frank Winnie, and Alice in Wonderland carry the same elements he's always worked with, but for some reasons those stories did not hold the same strength of his previous work. Burton's latest film, Miss Peggy's Home for Peculiar Children, is yet another prime example. Based on Ransom's Riggs 2011 debut novel, Miss Peggy's Home for Peculiar Children tells the story of Jacob, a 16-year-old misfit struggling to make sense of life after the death of his grandfather. When Jacob's therapist, Dr. Goldens, convinced his parents to let him go to Wales to learn more about his grandfather and gain the closer he won't be able to find in Florida, he uncovered more than he intended to find. Then this newfound information takes Jacob on a time traveling, magical journey that will change his life forever. In regards to the film as an adaptation, I find that this less like the book a film can be. The better Burton and his screenwriter, Jenny Goldman, included a certain element from the novel, such as Rick's use of the old photograph and archival material. In both the book and the film, Jacob's grandfather uses this to attempt to tell Jacob grand fantasy tales of monsters and children with peculiar ability. These photographs, maps are found along the way, and books act as a treasure hunt, each bite unveiling an aspect of Jacob that he never knew existed before. The movie goes beyond give to include a coming of age story. Eric's characters and overall storyline will be incorporated within the film, but how these characters get from point A to B varies throughout. Screenwriter Goldman is known for her collaboration with Matthew Vague's on Kingsman, The Secret Service, X-Men, First Class, and Kick-Ass. Despite these past success, her script is this film's biggest problem, particularly at the beginning where the dialogue is a stunt and lacks flow. The lines read robotically and it distract from the engaging performance of Eva Green, Samuel L. Jackson, Asa Butterfield, and Ella Purnell. The script's clunky structure dims the climatic moments of the film, leaving viewer dissatisfied when the credits roll. Fortunately, Burton's film go beyond story. He finds collaborators with similarly twisted visual sensibility to create sequences in his head. Cinematographer Bruno Del Bonel, who worked the Burton's own dark shadow and big eyes, beautifully captured the trailer's mystical atmosphere. The bright color palette and the distinctive costume, designed by the Colleen Atwood, are sharply filmed and keep viewer mesmerized throughout. Although the story falters its way to the end, Miss Peregrine's technical aspect managed to intrigue you enough to make it a worldwide. Thought are igniting questions about a certain character. By the time the end of credits roll, the film's striking visual help demonstrate. I am assuming a lot of you were left scratching your heads after watching the Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children movie. Must be trying to figure out how loops really work in this movie. The direction is to be blamed a little for that, I surmise. Since the closer significance of showing loop interest and exist was next to absent. Also, the surprise equations that the flicks zone have tracked all along now really came to fruition. It goes without saying that the time theory is huge. To be stuck in a loop, to be able to relive it over and over again is concept that demands an ample amount of focus and time to process. I believe a 2 hour 7 minutes movie can't relate to a prodigious concept like that justice. Now, since we can't really wait for a TV show to watch things fall into the place, let us make the whatever little we have to work with. I have explained how timeless in the Miss Peregrine Home for Peculiar Children. Movie back here, so without wasting more time, let's chew it, cat. Before trying this grandfather's app, tell Jack to go to the theater home. I want to find a bird in a loop of September 3, 1943. Time Burton's latest fantastical oddity, Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children, sent a hefty $28 million at the US box office in the first weekend on releases. But Peter Pegg's acclaimed disaster movie Deepwater Horizon, about 2010 oil rig explosion in the Gulf of Mexico, failed to attract an audiences. In a crowded autumn weekend, Miss Peregrine came out to her own top. The 20th Century Fox releases, adapted from Renaissance Riggs' popular young adult fantasy novel, cost $110 million, meaning it will not a strong performance overseas too. It started without $26 million in 59 markets. Burton's best opening since Dark Shadow in 2012. It validates the whole notion of why we made this film, which is something that very original and creative. Zach is Aronson's president of domestic distribution at Fox. At least I feel that this is what audiences were looking for. There is some fatigue with the same old. Some old, and if there is anything this movie is not, is that Deepwater Horizons cost at least $110 million to produce, featuring a nearly life-size replica of the Deepwater Horizon oil rig. The landscape releases was well reviewed, but managed to only $20 million. The film's performance was another blow for the struggling landscape, which has had difficulty finding hits since the Hunger Games saga finished. The stock price has fallen, and the departure of its movie chief Rob Fartman was announced last month. It does, however, have a film Damien La Land due later this year and expected to be an Oscar favorite. Last week's top film, The Magnificent Seven, set to thrill with $15 million in its second week. Disney's uplifting jazz prodding Del Queen K. Catway, starring David Oyelowo and Lupita Nyong'o, brought in a dismal $2.6 million in its national expansion. Audiences have had a surprising number of adult-driven options at the multiplex of late, including another tutorial. Clint Eastwood solely up to $105 million in 4 weeks. Denzel Washington's remark of the Magnificent Seven aims for similar audiences. Queen of Catway, directed by Meira Nair, tried to lure family to the inspiring true story of a jazz player from the Afghan slum. Paul, senior media analyst for Comscore, raised the issue of budget among the trio of original, particularly In the case of the privacy, Deepwater Horizon, all three of those original movies were expected to do better. He said, I have the studio's credit because they were good movies. They were not sequel for reboot, and yet we are coming across audiences who are not interested or distracted. Originally slated for release in summer 2015, the Zach Galifianakis and Nick Christian's Vic Heist comedy Masterminds sat on its shelf for a year while its distributor, Relativity Media, went through Chapter 11, bankruptcy protection. It opened with a mediocre $6.6 million. Two other notable films opened in limited release with plans for later expansion. Andrea Arnold Road Trip. Despite some doggy reviews and concerns about the lack of the diversity in the cast, Tim Burton's latest Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children took the top spot at the American box office this weekend with a solid $28 million, according to studio estimate, with a $110 million budget to make up, not including marketing and distribution. It will be have to hope for strong legs and decent international business, but it's a good start. Disaster drama Deepwater Horizon also opened strongly, earned $20 million for the latest collaboration between director Peter Buck and star Mark Wahlberg. That means last week's top spot release their Magnificent Seven slipped to third with $15 million, a drop of 24%. Family comedy Stroke fell to fourth from second, taking home $13 million. The main Sully had to fall again to fit, but it still made $8 million and has now family passed the $100 million mark in the state alone, with $15 million as its worldwide total so far. Long delayed crime comedy Masterminds did not enjoy the same success as the other new arrival, making Jew with a sixth place launch. The movie made $6.6 million, so as it to run salt in its positioning wound. Stage drama queen of Catry added 11 entries screen to its roll out and jumped into the top button at 7th with $2.6 million. The movie has made a little more than $30 million so far from American audiences, which is not great with a $50 million budget to recoup. Horror thriller John Braid stayed in the charts with 6 weeks under its belt, slipping to 7th, and the $20 million Bright Jones Baby continued its fall, dropping to 9th on $23 million, while Shodan saw its taking decline 50%, adding $2.2 million in 10th for an $18.7 million stateside total. Oliver Stone will have to wait and see whether international audiences will embrace his true life tale of his vice-blowing and governmental spying. Despite some dodgy reviews and concern about the lack of diversity in the cast, took to top a spot at the American box office this weekend with a solid $28 million according to studio estimate, with a $110 million budget to make up, not including marketing and distribution. It will have to hope for strong legs and decent international business. The characters are well developed and in a little bit over 2 hours, and fans are thrilled by the end result. Every role is different from the next, and this is what makes the movies interesting. From their power to their tragic life, they all lead. It's all worth seeing, however. If fans had to choose which characters was their all-time favorite, who would play the characters of Mr. Barron was portrayed by the legendary Samuel Jackson, and although he is an extremely talented actor, Pulp Fiction, Grand Chief Otto, San Andreas, and Star Wars, his character as the main antagonist of the story and spent most of the movies trying to hunt down the peculiar children for his own ambitions. It's not exactly hard to see why many people detest his character, since he seemed to have no ethical or moral boundaries. Dr. Golden, portrayed by the Academy Award winning Allison's Johnny, is a psychiatrist who has been possessed by the Mr. Baron and also the only one who encourages Jacob Portman to find the island where the loop happened. A character such as Dr. Golan can't be exactly hated since it is not directed, therefore, and for what it has been said, and then the viewer are not expected to form any kind of specific relationship. Is character that is easily forgotten as soon as the movie comes to an end. Frank Portman is Jack's father and the person who helped his son to discover the true story behind his children's home. He is an ordinary father figure who wishes the best for his child and he would do anything to see Jack happy. In Osho Corner's finally, MC Callan Millen is one of the gifted children who has the ability to animate object to life by simply performing a minor surgery while placing a heart of an animal into the chest. However, this is only for a short amount of time. While he was rather strange and rude in the beginning, Enoch revealed there was a more caring and brave side to his personality as the story progressed. It just goes to show that maybe one should never judge a book by its cover. Olive Alfentra is also one of the gifted teenage specular who let murder the care of Miss Peregrine, despite having to go through life wearing black rubber gloves to protect those from her protagonists. Olive does not let this get her down. In fact, she is seen to be quite sweet and kind. Her bravery is also something that the audiences account for. She will be do whatever she can to protect her family. Miss Advocate by notorious James Bond actor Judi Dench is a very special character in the movie. She is strong and willing to go sacrifice her life is to save the children. Her story is tragic since her students were slaughtered by the Hogwarts as she was desperately fighting to save them. When a character has led to great tragedy and the story is shown to the audiences, it is most likely that they will like immediate respect and empathy toward the character. Also, Judi Dench is a legend that many people are in awe just by appearing on the screen. Abraham Ezra Portman, better known as Ab, is the grandfather of Jake, who introduces him to the new world on the island. For the audiences, Ab is a very important character, since through him they are able to understand the entire story of how the form for peculiar children function and its history. Fans believe this that at the hands of the Holocaust is heartbreaking and cruel as it is moment where the good guys lose one of their most valuable assets. Alma's Leffie Peregrine, portrayed by the iconic Eva Green, is the headmistress of the school for peculiar children, which is also considered their first heaven, as she's sharp, smart, beautiful, and very capable, which makes her the perfect main character. She is respected by her students and loved by the fans and audiences. Jacob Jake Magellan Portman, played by the actor John Gamer Asa, is one of the main characters in the movie, so he is by default among the favorite film from the start. Although he is shy and withdrawn, the journey to the island and his adventure reveal our true hero. He is very scrappy and uses every bit of the information to save himself and the rest of the children. He fully devotes himself to every goal, so he is successful in the outcome, which is the cause for a great deal for respect. Emma Bloom is one of the other heroic, peculiar children. When audiences first meet her, it is revealed that her power are all acrobatics. She is known to be extremely trusting and loyal, putting her life on the line on the several occasions to protect her friends. Since she was also be Jacob's life interest, the audiences gets to learn a lot about her character, more in comparison to all the other. So it is not really hard to see why fans like her more. In Miss Pregrine's home for peculiar children, there is much power in being observant, clever, and resourceful, as there is the ability to turn invisible or bring life to doll, without possessing the intelligence and living to a thought about them. Whether it's because of the threat of the Mr. Bannon, the wait who desire immortality, or the unimaginative human who cannot comprehend the appeal of every characters in Tim Burton's lavish fantasy, still has to think on their feet. Yembrance, like Miss Peregrine, Miss Advocate, is the headmistress of shelter, very much like Miss Peregrine's home for peculiar children, except in Blackpool. She has the ability to transform into a bird, an advocate, and then manipulate them like any other vampire. She has the wits to escape from her home at the same time that Mrs. Bannon and his hollow attack, but just barely. She is also of great help of Miss Peregrine's and her ward by the time they have to face their own hollow. A polite and well-dressed young boy, Horace Sampsons, often keeps to himself in the garden of Miss Peregrine's shelter. He does not participate in many of other children games but prefer to have his nose stuck in a book. When he does engage with the other, it is helping to facilitate movie night. His peculiar power is being able to project what he dreamed through a Mongol, which sometimes ends up being prophetic and given the children an edge over Mr. Baron and a hollow. Surely an antisocial, Enoch M. McKellen spent most of his time in his room, remaining dead things and manipulating them like a creepy puppet. He is upset about being stuck in the same time period on the same day for the rest of his life and long for a chance to live like a normal person. As one of the eldest children of at Miss Preggine's shelter, he has a chain responsibility to the younger ward, and he protects them as best he can. He is certainly cloud despite his childish personality, and is not shy about showing off his creation with the ability to set anything alight, given the slightest touch. Olive has to be wear special gloves at all times, lest they accidentally start a spontaneous configuration. She does remove one to help cover Jack's escape from a local pub before Emma ferries him, and more of Miss Peregrine were to be mannered. Olive is smart and resourceful, but does not always show it, spending more of her time helping Enoch with this experiment so that he will be noticed her. She views her power as a handicap rather than a magical gift. Armed with the ability to turn himself invisible, Milord Cameron can be quite the trickster, often using his peculiar power to cheat at games with the other children, or to simply scare them. His quick thinking and fast reaction end up helping the other characters stay alive. When Jack thinks he has the power to move objects with his mind, it turned out to be Millard who, after having stripped off his cloth, throws culturally and dishes round the pub so that Jack can escape harm from the local. Emma has the power to manipulate air. It comes with some impediments. If she does not wear lead shoe, she will be floated away into the atmosphere. She helps Jake understand his family history and even shows him her secret hideout underwater, which ends up saving the day when the children need a new loop. As intelligent as she is kind, Emma ends up becoming the love interest for Jake, who ends up following in the grandfather footsteps in more ways than no. Some of her comments seem to even suggest a sequel could happen after Jack discovers the mean to see her again in a different loop. The most cunning of all the wives of Mr. Barron is a shapeshifter with the ability to disguise himself in a variety of human form. This allows him to hide in a plain sight, and posing as Jake's therapist Dr. Golan at one point to lure him into a false sentence of security. Mr. Barron desires have above all else to be the most beautiful powerful wife imaginable, but to do this, he feels he must gain immortality, something he thinks will happen by draining Yam brain when the experiment fails, and he must discover how to regain human form. He devises a disorderly plan for him and his fellow wives consuming the eye of peculiar. Jack's grandfather, Airport Man, has a unique ability to see hollow where others cannot, making him an invaluable member of Miss Reagan's home. When Mr. Byron and his ghastly minion attack, Abby can help protect them, and her latter leaves the school to hunt them down around the world in other loops. When Jack is born, Ab leaves his life of high adventure behind and settles into a life in the suburb, where he entertains Jack with the stories the family thinks are the raving of an old man. Ab eventually dies at the hands of one of Mr. Barron's hollow, but not before he can tell his grandson to find Miss Peregrine and his old friend. He leaves clue for Jack because he knows he'll be able to continue with his altruistic work. Jack is a normal teenager working in a drugstore before his life taking a turn for the peculiar. After his beloved grandfather is killed, he learns that all of the stories he was told as a child are true, and there is a distant to take up his grandfather calling, blessed with Ab's peculiar power. To see Hollow, he becomes an integral part of Miss Pregrine's home. Jack is resourceful and innovative, which makes him an asset to Miss Peregrine and Harvard. By being able to move between time loops like his grandfather, he is able to discover another way to locate them again, even after the original loop is closed. As the champion is charged for her loop, Miss Peregrine Evergreen must be exceptionally clever and vigilant. Since the time Jack Portman as a bud was a toddler, he was dressed by his grandfathers Abraham and Charles tales of growing up during World War II as well as his magical children's home where Abraham's look refuge for much of his adolescence. Miss Pregrine's home for specular children, a now 16-year-old. Jack begins to question whether his grandfather's stories, in which Abraham told of friends with supernatural abilities and he recounted battles with evil monsters, were true or simply elaborations that Jake's grandfather made up to avoid the harsh reality of war with Nazi Germany. However, Jacob witnessed his grandfather die at the hand of the same spindly creature that no one else can see. He becomes obsessed with the investigation whether his grandfather was crazy, and as a result, whether Jake himself might be losing his own mind. To get answers, Jack traveled from his home in Florida to Wales in hope of finding Miss Alma, Lafay, Pregnance, Eva Green, and assuming they actually existed her centricity of specular children as the novel source material offers a solid mix of emotional drama and quirky horror concepts that are perfect fit for Burton's sensibilities, providing an intriguing stage on which to build a memorable and thoughtful movie experience. It is not Burton is most ambitious or using a work to do it by Mr. Pregnant's Home for Specular Children is a setup from the comparatively safe adaptations and Johnny Depp collaboration the filmmakers produced over the last decade. At face value, the movie is competent, imaginating of Rick's best-selling novel, a unique twist, only recent law of chosen one young adult novel adaptations, Burton enhanced Jake Ward, a specular with striking visual, nuanced characters, moment, and charming performance from his cast. The core narrative of Rick's novel and the resulting film covers a lot of the same story beats as other popular where properties, especially those are supernatural backdrop, such as the Harry Potter and the Percy Jackson. Short, even when viewers may be able to anticipate where the story. There are enough new spaces to keep the experiment experience fresh spaces that are made all the more interesting thanks to Burton's lavish vision of the home for specular children and its inhabitants. The directors navigates a challenging balance between honoring the current story while also establishing a world that can be explored further in sequel and while Jake drives the narrative forward. It is in Miss Fragrance and her charges that supply the film with his most entertaining moment. Considering all of the franchises set up that battles include, Jack is not quite as developed as the larger story implies, but as Battlefield established a likable a window through which the audiences can learn about Miss Peregrine and the specular. Unsurprisingly, Eva Green is a scene later as Miss Peregrine, one of his actresses, is channeling similar roles from her recent filmography, including Penny Dreadful and her previous collaboration with Burton as Angelique Blanchard in Dark Shadow. Still, even if the role is not a significant stretch of screen, it's fun to watch the talented actresses put a Burton askew twist on a classic headmaster character, such as Mary Poppin. For many, Ella Ponnell will be the highlight of the film as Emma Bloom, a teenage girl who defies gravity and must wear metal shoes in order to prevent floating away. Bloom is the heart of the film's Annie Purnell, who is the mainly recognizable for appearance as young version of the Angelina Jolie in Maleficent, Margaret Robbie in The Legend of the Tarzan, and Keira Knightley in the Never Get Let Me Go. Delivers a breakout performance as Bloom's gravity, defying popularity is perfect match for Burton's lush visual aesthetics and with his partner's ability to convey a character struggling to maintain cheerful optimism in the face of crushing isolation. The filmmakers and actresses give life to a character that recall Burton's long history of powerful storytelling. The film's villain, Mr. Baron Samuel Jackson, is also a representation of Burton's better work, a bizarre but captivating mix of Jackson's trademark sizzle blood with creepy prosthetics and a zany black story. Jackson chose this scenario and make for a hunting site, even if his character is ultimately relegated to a monologuing Avildor. Similarly, the supporting cast of Specular is comprised of characters who are primarily defined by the ability rather than the particularly impactful interaction with Jack, Emma, Miss Peregrine, or Baron. Certain specular are more interesting, both visually and in the concept, than others. None are quite as well realized as Emma's arachnesis, Nevertheless, they save the story at hand and in addition to fleshing out Pregrine's home and its larger world of the specular, each of the side characters gets their own hero moment before the credits roll, including several that contribute equal parts humor and horror fantasy. As it emerges of Barton's filmography, Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children is a twisted fairy tale that uses coming of age protagonists to explore the challenges of self discovery. Grief and growing up, parents who are considering taking their kids to the movies will likely find the films includes a lot of creepy moments that matters too much for the choices box row to handle. A caveat that has made all the more notable. When paired with a 27 minutes runtime, for teens and adult filmmakers, the island of Miss Peregrine's Home for peculiar children won't be an issue, since Burton appeared in a steadily flow of memorable interaction. A horror-like subject matter is the reason for parents to take that PG-13 rating seriously and determine whether their kids who might have liked Burton's Alice in the Wonderland or been induced to by colorful Miss Peregrine's trailer will actually enjoy the film. Likewise, a 3D tickets is not a necessity, but Miss Peregrine's Home for Specular Children is a beautiful film with visual snap and the several set pieces moment that will be enhanced by the premium format. It's too early to tell whether this adaptation of Ransom Drake's debut novel is an insecure that Burton is a rediscovering his creative sweet spot, but the movie is nonetheless an encouraging step in the right direction. One that plays to the filmmaker's trend and reward long-term fans who have been craving vintage Burton experience. Ultimately, Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children should provide the moviegoers with an entertaining and emotional ride as well as a nightmarish visual to save 127 minutes and is rated PG-13 for instance sequences of fantasy action, violence and peril, now playing in 2D and 3D theater. Let us know what you to be thought of the film is the comment section below. Time Burton's dark fantasy movie, Miss Peregrine's Home for Particular Children, stars Asa Butterfield and Ella Purnell as some of the titular specular. Throughout the cast of the Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children starred some of the Time Burton's regular collaborators and was adapted from a very popular novel. It received middling reviews when released. Now it is considered one of Burton's most underrated films and one of the best movies about kids with power. The story concerns Jake who grew up hearing his grandfather talk about monsters only to discover that the monsters and real and Miss Peregrine can help. The movie introduces with Peregrine played by Eva Green, who has provided a home for children with special power and are known as specular by creating a time loop. This allowed the children to relive the same day over and over again in safety without aging. Miss Peregrine's or specular herself is one of the most powerful characters in both the book and the movie. And while Eva Green gives an excellent performance, not all book fans were impressed at the fantasy movie. Adaptations was not like the book and made significant changes to some favorite. Among all the characters in Miss Peregrine's School for Specular Children, Ava Green's character is one of the most powerful. She plays the titular Miss Peregrine, who is special kind of specular known as an Wambrain. She and the other Wambrains can shape-shift into the birds, and while the becomes a Peregrine's falcon. Time Burton's movie briefly shows another character with the same power. Miss Avocate can turn into an avocate and is played by Dram Judy Dench. Due to their ability, then often set into the wider world to rescue spoiler as children and bring them within the time loop to grow older and vice versa. Gambians like Miss Peregrine also have the ability to manipulate time, which is why she is able to create a safe haven for the children in her charge. Due to their abilities, they often set out into the wider world to rescue specular as children and bring them within the time loop to grow older and wiser. Like Jake's grandfather Ab, Miss Peregrine's time loop is a September 3rd, 1943, just before the house in is destroyed, and Jack is the main character in Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children, and unlike many other children who find themselves under Miss Peregrine's care, Jack's peculiarity is not immediately obvious. Peculiarities are often inherited, although they can sometimes skip a generation and take as inherited his ability from his grandfather. Both characters can see monsters, a shape-shifting creature called hologhosts or hollows. Ab's career have been written off as Terminator, but this is a cryptic warning saved Jack's life. The Hollow are peculiar scientists who becomes monstrous after killing an avian brain. While trying to use her power to make themselves immortal, they are shapeshifter and by eating the eyes of other peculiar, they can take on the appearance of human. But with white wires, Ajak has to deal with the death of the app at the hands of a Halo, subsequent betrayal and a multiple time jumps, making this one of Asa Butterfield's best movie role. Miss Peregrine's School for Peculiar Children is often considered to be one of Ella Parnell's best movie. She plays Emma, who has the power of aerokinetics, which means that she is lighter than air and can float like a human helium balloon. She is also able to manipulate air in unexpected ways, including breathing underwater. This was a very creative approach compared to most descriptions of characters with the ability to control air, and Emma's appearance was one of the most memorable in the movie. Due to her power, Emma would naturally float away off not right down. So she wore enormous light boards throughout most of the movie to keep her in the ground. While this was an interesting and easy to cosplay look, Emma was not a popular character among fans of the original book as she was drastically changed from her book counterpart, with the movie swapping her ability with those of the another character. In the original book, it is Olive with can float and Emma who can manipulate fire. Time Burton's movie not only swapped the character's power but made Olive into a teenager. While she is physically one of the younger children in the book, Olive can create fire in her hand but could potentially burn everything she touches. Like Rogus in the X-Men franchises, Olive wears gloves at all times to prevent harming her home and the other characters. Olive looks around 15 but she is around 75 in reality, with an implied romantic relationship with one of the others peculiar of around the same age. Her powers are almost the exact opposite for her personality, as Olive is one of the quieter and more gentle specular, living with Miss Peregrine. She usually uses her power, her small task, like boiling the kettle by holding it and setting fire by touching the hair. Many children in Miss Peregrine's home for specular children have powers that appear to reflect the opposite of their personalities. That said, Enoch is a somber and a serious character, which is understandable given he is rather disturbing. Peculiarity fellows can render the that and bringing the inanimate object to life. He is one of the Burton's best character, despite having a relatively minor role in the movie. His combination of King's kindness and careness is a common term Burton rope and make them perform battles before the power wears off. He has a collection of animal heart, which is implanted into his creepy puppet to give them life, which is a beauty check in the movie, and his ability are temporary. So while he is able to revive the frozen alive, he is not able to bring a dead body back to life permanently. While Mallard as a main character in the book, he is a minor character in Miss Peregrine's home for peculiar children and is usually performed when characters discuss the various of the children while looking through Miss Peregrine's photo album. Mallard is invisible and wears a flat cap and cloth, which gives him a physical form. He is played by Cameron's James King, using motion picture and voice acting. Brony Man is a small and fun-loving child of around 12, with a mischievous sense of humor. Miss Peregrine describes her as having both inner and outer strength, as Brony's peculiarity is her extreme physical strength. She is easily able to lift Jack up and turn him around. Brony's brother Victor also has super strength ability, but he barely appeared in the movie, and it appeared that most of his scenes were cut. The children cannot venture outside of the time loop as they will become vulnerable to the halo, who cannot enter the loop as long as Miss Peregrine rests every day. Before the events in the movie, Victor leaves the loop, is killed by a halo, and is brought briefly back to life by a nose. Hugh is a particularly could have made him one of the creepiest kids in movie, but in a typical Tim Burton style, Hugh is lovable and accidents performed while also having some phobia. inducing power. Kit has been living in his stomach, and Miss Peregrine compare his personality to their home, saying they are too sweet him left alone, but when provoked, capable of delivering a painful string. Q cannot always control his beasts and wears a big caper, well to keep them inside him, but he can also unleash them deliberately. Q has a mischievous streak and is seen letting his beasts out to be distract the other peculiar children when they are playing with a ball, but this does serious damage when unleashing his power on the hollow. In several scenes, Hughes opened his mouth wide, and the beast appeared to pour out of him, which is a visual image visually more suited to a horror movie like Candyman's Tale. Hughes cares for the beast scalping them to pollinate and they barely sting. Many fantasy movies focus on the character's power of fighting, but Fiona has one of the most useful strategies in Miss Peregrine, Home for Peculiar Children. Fiona is finally attuned to nature, and her power allows her to control and nurture the plants surrounding her, which included the vegetable in the house's garden. In the movie, Fiona makes her carrot grow to an enormous size, feeding every day in the house at dinner. It is understandable that due to their connection to the natural world, Fiona and Hugh can make a formidable pair when working together. Fiona's powers are much more versatile they appear, and she does not just use them for feeding the household. When she escapes out of a window, she makes a tree branch extend toward her she can climb down, and when she throws a handful of seeds at one of the hollow, they grew into the constructive vines within a second. It is understandable that due to their connection to their natural world, Fiona and Hughes can make a formidable pair when working together. Claire is one of the few books characters whose age was not changed for the movie, as she is about 6 years old in both. Claire is one of the characters in Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children, whose powers and appearance are opposite. Claire's style resembles a cute doll, as she wears pink dress and her